Yes, good morning once again mga kapatid, mga kaibigan. May mic ba ako? Parang wala akong mic. May mic ba? Nadidinig ba ako sa mic? For a while, Mr. Sonny Moroz. May audio? I have an audio. Hello. Ay, may audio pala. Medyo mahina lang. Anyway, may audio wala. Yes, again, here we are. Our visitor is here already. And let's welcome our visitor, Mr. Sonny Moroz, the candidate of Snowdon. Let's welcome. Mhm.
Hi, DJ Yui.
Good morning. Oh, it's not morning anymore. It's good
No.
afternoon.
Yeah, magandang hapon.
Oh, maganda. Wow, okay. How are you today?
Very good, very good. Very tired, I have to tell you.
Yeah, I can see it.
Absolutely,
So, probably we're gonna talk about you most of the time, who you are, and the question is well in line everything in your candidacy as a candidate in Snowdon district. So
well, thank,
you have
thank you,
you have
DJ
the
Yui.
floor to introduce yourself to the people who's watching right now. So you have the time to say what is your background, uh, what is your affiliation. So I will not ask about it. I'll give you the floor to talk to the people who are watching now. Go ahead,
Well,
Mr. Moros.
thank you, DJ Yui. Thank you also to Joselle and everybody behind the scenes who makes Canadian Pinoy Radio Montreal possible. Congratulations on your years of service to the community. I think it's great what you do. Just having multiple points of view out of Côte-des-Neiges, I think is crucial to make sure that people's lived experiences, things they go through every day, walking down Victoria, going down Van Horn, up and down Mackenzie, that you get understood part of what you're contributing to in Montreal. So it's not just about what I'm here to say, but I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your platform and to your viewers. You have a very unique viewership in that it's international, but also has an impact locally. And if you don't mind, before jumping into everything about me, I just want to say what you've been doing recently, I find very impressive with some of the statements you've been making about being bold and implicated and unapologetic in how you're doing things. I think that's what you got to do. You have to be you. And as you started feeling it out at the beginning, I think maybe the first 4 or 5 years you were doing CPR radio, you're trying to do radio for everybody. But now you've got your following, you've got your groups of people that actually know what you're about, and they just want more of you. And that's what life's about these days. You want to make sure that you can speak to the people who want more out of you and want you to do more. And you can't listen to the people who want other things from you because they don't get you. You have to work with people who get you and want to work with you. And I just want to speak to that bravery that you're speaking to your viewers. Congratulations.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Actually, before you continue, I want to see you this comment. You see, I want to move back to Côte-des-Neiges area.
Well, unfortunately, you can't buy a duplex anymore for $68,000. That's something that doesn't exist anymore. So I hope you've been successful your time away from Côte-des-Neiges so that you can come back and afford to live here, because there's an affordability crisis going on in Côte-des-Neiges too. People who have bought in for a long time, who own their properties, are doing very well, but the renters are being pushed out, and they're being. I can speak to that a little bit later. But DJ Yui, you're living in the thick of things. So I'm not going to give away where you live, but where you live is having some issues with new owners of old buildings trying to get rid of tenants who have been there for 20 years who pay significantly less than what the average they can get for rent. Before we talk specific issues, I'll talk to the introduction. So, Iko Sisani, I've been working in the area of Côte-des-Neiges for the past 9 years. 9 years working for Marvin Rotran as somebody who's a volunteer for him. I organized his 2013 campaign. That was the first campaign that I was a part of. I also organized his 2017 campaign, where I organized 17 candidates across the island of Montreal, gaining experience and know-how throughout the whole island of Montreal, but also on what it means to run. Because I'm going to speak to experience first. It's really, politics is not an entry-level job. It's very hard to get involved at a young age. And I did so diligently. I'm only 31 years old, but with 9 years experience working with Marvin Rotran, I know I can deliver on the promises that I want to make for the community. So it's one of those things. I commend my opponents and other people who are running with me on my team and other candidates across the island of Montreal, because city politics is dirty and people don't really know what it's about. So they often resort to ad hominem attacks. That's attacking the person instead of their argument or the content of what they're trying to say instead of how they're saying it. And I find that to not benefit us. You know, as a city, we get there's the federal elections, there's the provincial elections. Those governments take up a lot more of headspace in terms of how people think about representation and who's got our backs. So when it comes to federal, it's immigration, it's military, it's finance, it's travel, and those things are what impact us federally. Provincially, it's also important: healthcare, education, transportation. There's these very important files that impact us here. But when it comes to city, you're left with a little less interesting topics to most. So they often don't find each other. I was amazed how many people tell me they don't vote at the city level. And I think it's because it's more complicated and people don't understand where their interests are. So I commend everyone running in this election. There's 103 seats up for grabs at the city level. And each person who goes in to vote in each of the 19 boroughs, they get a different number of votes. So if you live in Verdun, if you're a CPRM watcher in Verdun right now, you actually get 5 votes on election day. You vote for the mayor of the city, your borough mayor, your city councillor, and then 2 borough mayor positions. That's borough councillor. So in Côte-des-Neiges NDG, we don't even have that position. There are no borough city councillors, borough councillors. And so we printed out this easy to read document, even in the colors that the ballots are. So like in the American elections, if you were ever living in the States, you go in and vote. You vote for the governor, you vote for a referendum, you vote for the Senate, the congressperson all at once. So it takes you about 15 minutes to vote. But in Montreal, you actually only get 3 votes if you're in Côte-des-Neiges NDG, and they're different colors. So this would be for city councillor, this would be for borough councillor, and this would be for mayor. So you go in, you get 3 different ballots. They'll look like this with everybody's names. And then you would go in and you would vote your heart's desire. So that's just to explain that all that is what you need to know going in to vote. So it prevents a lot of people from getting involved. It prevents a lot of good discussions because less people get involved. So when I get to the door and I want to meet you for the first time, I tell you the tangible things I can help you with. I want to take things off your plate. You work, you have a family, you might be a senior, you might be a first-time voter, but there are things that are impacting you at the city level that you may not be able to handle by yourself, that I want you to have my cell phone number and my direct details so that when it does impact you, all you have to do is contact me and I will handle it for you. For example, let's say they don't pick up your garbage this week and you don't want it to sit there for a week. You know what happens when it does. The squirrels get to it. The raccoons get to it. Maybe someone thinks that that's a makeshift garbage and they throw their Tim Hortons mugs down there. So we don't want that. That leads to more problems, more costs that we then can't invest in other nice places. So call me. Let me know. Take a picture of it and report it on the 311 app. Or just let me know that you live at this address and that they didn't pick up your garbage this week, and I'll make sure it does. In the same way, that's how street cleaning works. So whether it's street cleaning or de-icing on the sidewalks, we're going to have a bad winter in terms of precipitation. That means a lot of snow, which then leads to ice. And we need to have regular operations to make sure our seniors, our parents, people with CPEs walking 14 kids down the street don't slip on the ice in our city. And those are the kind of things that I want to spend specific attention to fix so that we can get past those discussions. Other cities have that figured out. We're still dealing with old discussions like we don't even know how many garbages we have in Côte-des-Neiges NDG. So we don't know how many people to hire to pick up that garbage. So let's say there's a party on your street and the garbage collector takes twice as long to pick up the garbage on that street. We don't even know if he'll get to the end of his route that week. And that would be a reason why your garbage doesn't get picked up, because you might be at the end of that route and that worker doesn't need to work later than his hours to finish his route. And we don't even keep track of that information. So those kind of small improvements, those are three things. The fourth one I talk about is potholes. You know, we need a better way of dealing with our potholes. It's not expensive to fix our potholes, but it is when they're not maintained properly. So over the last 4 years in Côte-des-Neiges NDG, Projet Montreal had won. They've been in charge here for the past 4 years. And when I go door to door, if you don't mind me pulling out a document, I show people the investment. So it'll be backward a little bit, but you'll see the difference in graphic. So under Projet Montreal, they only invested 54 million. But the last time that Denis Coderre was in power, it was 111 million. And your taxes still went up. And that's how politics works. It's about priorities. So Côte-des-Neiges NDG was not a priority for Projet Montreal over the last 4 years. So we want to bring back a team that's complete. This is our team here. We have Dimitra, Ashley, Lionel, Stephanie, myself, Gabriel at the head of Denis Coderre's team here. And we're going to make sure that the priority gets brought back to Côte-des-Neiges NDG no matter what. We're going to put our hand on the table and not take it off until we get the right amount of funding that our residents deserve. And that's why our logo, our branding for our local team is Citizens First, les citoyens d'abord. And I think that's something that's been lacking, thinking about what do citizens need from the borough, whether it's parks, whether it's more park benches, whether it's cleaner streets, better sidewalks. These are things that 54 to 111 million dollars, that's less than half invested in new projects and improving the quality of life for people in Côte-des-Neiges. So when I go door to door, I try to explain why it's important to vote, what I can offer as a city councillor, what our team can do for the whole borough, and what the difference is between the priorities of our party and of Valerie Plante's party, because those are the two parties that have full teams that can end up making the decision about who wins and who loses for our city. And I want people to know that even though our platforms look similar and there's no Liberal Party or Conservative Party or NDP party at the municipal level, we still have values, and the values of our party are those that Côte-des-Neiges NDG represents. So before I stop my little intro, I just want to thank Tri-Sun Film. What are you going to do with the corruption and the Filipino Association and the other ethnic group if you win? So one thing, Tri-Sun Film, I want to thank you for watching CPRM, watching our discussion here about the local candidacies. And I'm not going to speak to what you're describing as corruption on the Filipino Association or other ethnic groups, but I do work in concert with organizations and community groups in the area. I have for the past 6 years been Anthony Housefather, the Member of Parliament's assistant. So when a Member of Parliament gets elected, he goes to Ottawa to do a lot of his work. He gets an office in Ottawa, and he also has work to do in Montreal, and he gets a Montreal office. And I've been working at that office for 6 years. I'm on leave now, so I don't know if I'll be going back there, but unlikely. And I've learned how to assist community groups in accessing program funding and activity funding from the federal, provincial, and private sector, as well as the municipal level. So, for example, an organization is doing seniors events, and they do one every month, and it's slightly educational. Maybe they'll bring in an expert to speak on hypertension one week, and the next month they'll bring in a yoga teacher. The month after, they'll do a class on technology. That's covered under a program at the federal level called the New Horizons for Seniors. So I'll work with local community groups and get them access to that program by first finishing the application, putting in a budget, making sure that they have the funding necessary to work that program. And then once they get it, I'll work with them the year after to try to get even more out of that funding program and expand their reach into the community. So to speak to Trison Film's question, when I deal with those that some might feel would be corrupt, there's ways of dealing with it when they deal with funding. So if you don't finish the program the way you said you would, the government takes that money back. So when it comes to corruption, it's important to keep track of all the things you're spending in and out of your association, so that if ever someone comes to you and says, "What did you do with those contributions?" or "I thought you said you were going to do this," all you have to do is show them the budgeting that you did that year, the input and output of that organization. That avoids people thinking that you're doing something else with that money. But at the same time, it's hard to run an organization. And most people who I know in Côte-des-Neiges run it as volunteers. And over the pandemic, it was extremely hard for a lot of organizations to stay afloat. And I was proud to work with the borough and the province and the federal government to find different ways to help fund those organizations who usually get their funding through events or membership drives or fundraisers. They were able to supplement their funding through the Emergency Canadian Community Support Fund, or the Côte-des-Neiges Borough, Côte-des-Neiges NDG Borough gave out $300,000 in funding to local organizations. And the reason why I would just encourage you, Trison Film, to get more involved in some of the community groups you might see as corrupt is because you'll see how difficult it is to do some of this work, and you'll see how much personal time and often personal money, whether it's just gas, driving things around. There was tons of food drives. Trust me, none of those volunteers were paid for their gas. They had to pay for it themselves. Those costs add up. It leads to complications between people that then lead to what some people would call corrupt. But to just finish on that point, one thing I'm going to do as an elected official is bring together all the communities on a diversity council. I work with everybody in the area. There's about 120 different languages spoken in Côte-des-Neiges, and there's over 100 different community groups just within the Filipinos. I'm joking. There's less than 100 community groups, but they multiply themselves a lot, and it's important that people can learn from one another. There's some organizations that do have paid staff, that do have an executive director that gets paid enough money that's their full-time job to worry about the activities of that group. We don't have many of those in Côte-des-Neiges because we kind of do it ad hoc after work on the weekends. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from one another when we learn how others do things, and when they learn about how we do things, and share on best practices to make sure that we can create better organizations for everybody. And just not to repeat myself again, but access funding. Côte-des-Neiges NDG needs to access more funding from programs at the federal, provincial, municipal level. And because it's so big, because Côte-des-Neiges NDG is larger than the city of Sherbrooke in Quebec, there's more people in Côte-des-Neiges NDG than there is in Sherbrooke. There's a lot of work to do for a lot of people in a small space. So the bureaucrats, the people who, as much as I'd like to take credit for it as a potential city councillor or somebody who's worked on files, the bureaucrats do a lot of the work in the borough, and they're overstretched. So we need people like myself to bring added value ideas. That's program ideas. That's knowing how to access that funding outside of how we do it already, outside of how people might suggest it through the traditional means. And we need to go find innovative ways to get community organizations the right amount of funding based on the taxes that we pay. And that's one of the things that when people say, "Why are you running?" is an honest answer, and a skill that I've developed internally for the member of parliament and I want to now do that for the district of Snowdon, its residents, and the borough of Côte-des-Neiges NDG. So that's pretty good in terms of an intro, DJ Yui. What do you think?
It's good. There's a question here. First question. This is from Lady Explorer, Giselle. You'd been active in many organizations in the borough, even way back working with MP Anthony Housefather. What are the common problems you met? Were the problem resolved? If not, how are you going to resolve once you're elected?
Thank you, Josel. So there's obviously a lot of issues that I'm signing myself up to deal with. We have an affordability issue for social housing. That's one that comes up whenever I go into apartment buildings, and you can see someone's like, "What are you going to do for me? I pay $750 a month for a 4.5, and I know that if I ever leave this place, I'm going to have to move off island because there's literally nowhere you can get a 4.5 for 750 that's livable." And for those people, I want to make sure that they know that, again, you can call on me. I know the services that are available. Often people try to get you out of your house by tricking you, by playing with the rules, because Quebec, despite what a lot of people think, has great laws on housing. You have rights as a tenant. And personally, I've had twice in my life a landlord, someone I'm paying rent to, try to get me out of my house with a lie, saying that there's something poisonous in the material in the basement, so we have to redo the pipes of the whole place. But then, knowing my rights, I went to the housing Régie du Logement. I asked for the permits that he was asking for, and he was asking for a permit downtown different than what he was telling me. And then I looked at my lease and I made sure that I had documentation. I said, based on what you said, based on the documentation, and based on what you submitted downtown, I'm refusing your move and I'm contesting it. And he actually ended up backing down because it was a lie. And similar to what's happening in Côte-des-Neiges, sometimes people are trying to give, for example, $6,000 to move out of your apartment. $6,000 sounds great, but if you're paying $750 and then your next apartment is $1,250, that's a $500 increase per month, then you've lost that $6,000 in the first year in just the rent increase. And not only is it bad for you, but the person who then takes your old apartment pays more in rent, which then makes it harder for people in the area to cover rent as well. And that's the part that I want to be responsible for. I want to make sure that people who have a quality of life in Côte-des-Neiges, that quality of life is maintained for the duration of the stay that they want to be here. Not what happened in Griffintown. Griffintown and the Plateau, those are exorbitantly expensive. And unless you're a young professional or a family with double income that has over $400,000 together, you can't afford a place there. I do not want that to happen in Côte-des-Neiges, and that's what's on the horizon. So that's a major issue. It's called gentrification. It's called renovictions. And one thing concretely I can tell you, a few things concretely, but one of them is we're going to partner with legal clinics, because whenever there's a problem, you have to hire a lawyer. You have to go to Project Genesis on Côte St. Catherine in Victoria, or which is a housing rights organization on Barclay and Côte-des-Neiges, to find out, hey, can you assist me in my séance in front of the judge at the Régie du Logement? Can you help me to make sure I'm writing the right document here? I got this all in French. How do I make sure that I respond without making a mistake? Or they gave me a deadline that's already passed. What do I do now? All these things, there are resources, but those resources are stretched thin too. So we're going to partner with legal clinics to give you access for free to their services, because that helps everybody. The worst thing that can happen is that you forget to go to a hearing and then the landlord wins by default, because no one wins there. That means you didn't get your rights defended, and a landlord got to do whatever they wanted. They could have, like what happened to me, it could happen to you. They can lie. And if you don't show up, the lie stands because you weren't there. So you're going to get better access to legal support. Another thing that is another way to get you removed is inspections. Now, inspections often have a negative connotation. People think, oh, they're coming to look at how I live and they're going to judge me if there's something here. No, I mean, maybe, but no, what they're there to do is to see the quality of your house and the apartment that you're living in. And we need to do that more regularly, because a landlord who wants to get rid of you, if there's no report for 6 years, they can leave it degrade. They can make it keep getting worse. And then they have a right to renovate. They have a right to redo it for a year. And then you're without a house for a year and you might end up having to move. That's another way of getting rid of you. If you're in a healthy situation, the landlord wants to get rid of you, you want an inspector to come more often so that they can keep track, so that if 1 year it gets worse, well, we know that the person living there and the owner at that time is to blame, and not the person who lived there a decade ago because there hasn't been an inspection done of your place. So more regular visits from the inspectors. That means more money into that program. That means more regular visits. And that's part of the larger innovation part of our platform. Locally, we talk about investments. That's from 54 to 111 million. We want to make sure we get reinvested in, that Côte-des-Neiges NDG becomes a priority again for Center City. But on the innovation front, on the inclusion front, that's the Diversity Council. That's speaking with community organizations. That's making sure that they have the resources they need. But on innovation, that's clarifying the process. That's making sure that if you have a permit that you want to go through, how long does it take? What documents do you need? What's the expectation if there is a problem? Who's going to solve it? Which board do you need to go in front of? All these things cost people money, cost people time, cost them stress, and all those things, it lowers people's quality of life. And like I stated in my intro, I'm here to improve the quality of life of people who live in Snowdon through the priorities of investment, innovation, and inclusion. So housing is a one major issue. Permits are another. And I'm happy to speak to another aspect of a question that someone might have. I saw Tri-Sun Film had a follow-up question.
Oh, okay. Follow-up question from Times Help Film. Mr. Sonny Moroz, can you comment on the funds on the association that missing or gone? Some of it leave the country and took the funds with them. Can you comment?
No, again, I'm not going to speak to any general claims of corruption made on the internet on a comment section on a YouTube page, although I appreciate Tri-Sun Film watching CPRM and taking the time to ask the question. We have the ability, when it goes through official channels, to follow up on where money is. I don't know who you're talking about or leaving the country. That's the first time I've heard of someone leaving the country with public funds. That sounds like a major issue. And I would encourage you to follow up with people like DJ Yui and Josel to find out what they can find out locally. And I do commit, Tri-Sun Film, if you give that information to DJ Yui, to follow up with him as well, to work with him constructively on stuff that we can find out to better the parts of our community. One of my first interactions with the Filipino community in Côte-des-Neiges was around supporting emergency fund donations back at home. So back at home meaning the Philippines, there was a hurricane and the typhoon, and they needed to send funds back to a home province. And it was amazing to see people get together and give funding back. And it's just amazing to see for me exactly how the community supports itself. But at the same time, what surprised me about that is that none of those organizations were registered charities in Canada. So people trusted local organizations, and I am trying to speak to your question. When you trust an organization and you give a donation, ask for a receipt. Make sure that you're part of an official process, especially when it's larger amounts of money, and look for charities, ones that are registered in Canada when you give in Canada. I know there's the Filipino Family Services that just successfully applied for their charitable number. And I hope to see other organizations that do benevolent charitable donations to register their charities with the Canadian government to avoid these claims that you're making that are unsubstantiated, but nonetheless, you and I know, and everybody else watching knows, that sometimes there's a little bit of seed of truth there, but rarely are we getting the full story. And I think it's important for parts of the community to start legitimizing themselves by hiring people and registering themselves with the charitable organizations so that we can start having more transparency, so that we can grow our institutions. And that's the kind of thing we'll learn from one another at the Diversity Council that I'm going to create. We used to have one. There used to be one until 2009. And for one reason or another, it was shut down. I think because people weren't getting along in the council, or some people had left and new people came in, and it led to discord. But I have a lot of faith in the community leaders in Côte-des-Neiges to come together and learn from one another so we can take a step forward and improve the lives of everybody here. So I think it's a good question, Trice on Film. I don't have a good answer because there's a lot of things unsaid. But give that information to DJ Yui. He's a journalist. He knows what to do with information. And let's work on these issues together.
Okay. So next one. This is about STM. What is there something that they can do to lessen STM fare for people living in Montreal? It is a subsidized government, or it's a private sector. Is STM private or semi government?
It's public. It's
public.
City of Montreal.
Okay.
STM is actually, they changed it. STM is no longer the top dog in transportation. It's now the ARTM. The ARTM now manage, or the RTM. It manages the wider area of the Greater Montreal. So the City of Montreal, and then there's 82 municipalities that include Laval because of the REM. The REM is the new train that's being built going west, and soon there's plans for it to go east, and it goes all the way to Brossard. That's going to increase the price of a lot of the STM fares on the island of Montreal. And we need to work as a city to afford to have individual residents like yourself pay less for STM fares. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the City of Montreal can't promise that anymore. They kept the STM running at close to full capacity, to 80% capacity during the pandemic. Even though there was only 30% of the people taking it that used to take it, they still had a lot of buses running on lines, and that's going to lead to a shortfall. So when you overinvest without income coming in, that means as a city, you don't have the ability to raise new money. You either increase taxes or decrease services. And that's a decision that, as an administration coming in, we're likely going to have to make the decision about what to do. Do we cut services in the STM or increase fares? And I appreciate the question, because I'm always someone who's going to advocate for cheaper transportation fares, for a less burdensome of the costs on seniors and on under 18-year-olds. So if you're over 65 or under 18, we're going to be championing cheaper rates. But for a citizen between 18 and 65, I'm to be honest, I don't know how they're going to keep fares low, given that they overspent during the pandemic. So again, it's a good question, and I hope that we can speak to the realities of the pandemic and what the budget is after the election, because I'm always concerned, as someone who loves politics at the municipal level, what happens every election that I've watched is there's always a deficit after the election. They always say, oh, look at the books. They don't add up. What they said we had, we didn't actually have. So that means that this project that we promised, or this project. So I take the question in good faith, and I hope that you put your trust in me that I'm a man of my word, and I will fight for lesser wages, lesser fares for under 18s and over 65s. But in all honesty, I want to make sure that we don't cut services for everybody else. So given that scenario, I hope to keep fares as frozen as long as possible, but I don't know if we can have it lessen for everybody else.
Okay.
But that's a good question.
From Lot Gomez is living here in Montreal, and he's planning to go back living here in Côte-des-Neiges. What is your plan with social housing?
So I spoke to social housing a couple times. The Denis Coderre party is planning on building 50,000 new units with over 10,000 social housing units. but there's a backup of close to 20,000 people who are waiting for social housing or would potentially access social and affordable housing in Montreal. And we need to start attacking on a more larger basis. But instead of just, throwing numbers at you and making it seem like there's no plan to build more social housing, it needs to be a priority of all levels of government. Federal, they're the ones who turn on the tap and it flows out of the federal government, the money. Then the provincial government makes the priorities of where the housing money will be spent. So that's something that they've gotten on the same page over only last year. This time last year, October 2020, is when the federal government and the provincial government of Quebec signed an agreement to say, we're going to give you this amount of money and we're going to spend it on this. And once that happens, the city can start saying, these are our priorities of what we need you to fund. So I hope that the new administration comes in, is a Denis Coderre administration that will then prioritize social housing actually being built on the island of Montreal, because we've had a record number of people over the last 4 years move off the island of Montreal. We had 56,000 people leave the city of Montreal. It's a record over the last 4 years. And that's because it's hard to find cheap rent. If you're a young family, where are you going to find a house with a backyard for your 2 kids? Off island, not on island, that's affordable. And if property value is going up off the island, then why not move there? That's the problem of Côte-des-Neiges NDG. That's the problem of the city of Montreal that we need to start attacking by building more units. The way you keep prices down and we fix the affordability crisis is by having more units. So if there's 2 units to bid on that are both $400,000, let's say, and there's 20 people going for them, they're going to bid up that price. Whereas if you have 20 units and there's 20 people looking for those units, then the price will be pretty much what the market entails instead of constantly push it up. So some people talk about only social housing. The big, if you don't mind me saying, lie that I try to deconstruct for people, but it's hard to listen to a long explanation. Affordable housing. People talk about affordable housing like it's a fix to a problem. Affordable in Quebec only means 15% below market value. So if you can't afford $1,400 a month, then you're not going to be able to afford $1,200 a month either. It's not the same. Social means you pay a certain amount of your money per month, 30%, 40%, whatever you make. If you're on the social housing needs, if you're on welfare and you have 4 kids, social housing is a fixed amount of your funding, of your income per month. But if it's affordable, you're basically in the general market, but in a cheap unit. And I don't think that's a solution for families. And I don't think that's a solution for many seniors either who want to upgrade before retiring. So when it comes to social housing, to answer your second part of the question, look, Blue Bonnets isn't finished because, again, it wasn't prioritized by Côte-des-Neiges NDG. I'm going to point again to this graph here. This is our local platform. Everybody in Côte-des-Neiges NDG got this. And this is the graph here. This here is this here is the amount invested in the borough under Coderre. This is the amount invested under Projet. And it just shows that they didn't build anything new here. I heard a presentation by Denis Coderre in 2016, in September 2016, where they showed the Blue Bonnets. They had a timeline. They explained how they're going to get to the projects built and the cabinet extension built afterwards. That was 5 years ago, and nothing's been changed since then. They did a public consultation, and the conclusion of that public consultation was they need a vision in order to move forward on the project. And instead of this sounding like a negative take on my opponents, I want to just say that we have a deadline. Quebec, the government of Quebec, gave the city of Montreal the land at Blue Bonnets. And they gave a stipulation saying, we gave it to you, but you need to start developing it by the end of 2023. Now, we're almost at the end of 2021. That means that the end of 2022, end of 2023, and that means permits, that means designing, that means the pipes, that means designing the parks and the public utilities. We need a school. We need to know how many housing. We need to start selling off plots of land to developers. And if we don't do that as a city, by the end of 2023, we've just lost the most valuable property in the middle of Montreal because of a lack of planning and priorities. So I thank you for the question. Blue Bonnets is a priority for me personally. It's also a priority for our administration to get it done by 2023, to start it, so that we can then plan ahead for that area. And instead of promising a no cars area and say we want people on social housing to no longer have a car to get around, and we want them to live in Blue Bonnets, I don't know many people like that. I don't know many families who can deal with no cars in Montreal and who need social housing assistance. So Blue Bonnets needs to be a priority for people who live in Côte-des-Neiges. One of the main things that I can promise you that isn't in the works right now, but I'm going to put it on the table every time I'm sitting there. I want people from Côte-des-Neiges to get access to that space. If we have over 2,000 people in Côte-des-Neiges, those are families. Those aren't a family of 5 doesn't count for 5 people. That's 2,000 applications waiting for social housing for years. I mean, there's devastating stories that people have told me about waiting and waiting and waiting, and then family members leaving the province because they can't afford to live here and they need social assistance. So I'm committed to making sure that Blue Bonnets becomes accessible for residents of Côte-des-Neiges, and that we finish building the projects for 2023 so that we don't give it back to Quebec and we don't look like fools giving up space that was given to us because we didn't come up with a plan on time. So I think that answers your question why Blue Bonnets wasn't done. It just wasn't prioritized because the current administration had all the powers. They had all the permit abilities. They could have made this done, and I could have been running here, and there could have been a building already being put at Blue Bonnets saying, look how great that building is, and you should vote for Projet Montreal because they started that work. But they haven't, because they don't prioritize our area. And I need you to support us so that we can reprioritize Côte-des-Neiges NDG.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer, Mr. Moroz. Again, I just want to clarify a few things because as we discussed, there are some funds of associations here in Montreal. Actually, we received report and 800,000 funds was lost, 825,000. But this one happens a long time before. Maybe you don't know it, but somebody told us. So what are the things that you can do that these things will be prevented, that it will not happen again?
Well,
once you're elected.
I don't think it's my responsibilities to be everybody's babysitter and caretaker. I think also part of Côte-des-Neiges is, vivre ensemble, living together. And I'm not here to bust in your door and blame you for something. If the allegations behind this are true, then it's extremely concerning. But as a city councillor, what I can do is I can make sure the organization doesn't get any more public funds from us. I can make sure that they are held more accountable and the people who are involved are more known to the community. I'm somebody who spreads positive information and positive news on a regular basis with people. So I'm not going to necessarily guess at what happened there. If you have more facts, again, please share them with journalists or with the right authorities so that we can get to the bottom of this. And to answer your question, DJ Yui, how would I prevent something like this from happening? Well, it's by lending my trust and my ability to work with people, only with people who keep records. Because again, no matter what organization you're with, if you're not keeping financial records, it's hard to trust how you're going to spend your money, even if you're trustworthy. Even if you're someone who the whole community loves and appreciates, if you're not keeping facts, you're not keeping a budget, it allows people to guess. And when people guess, they can guess wrong. And I hope that's the case with the Ilocano Association that you're alluding to. And I've just heard way too many times people guessing wrong. But that's the fault of organizations who don't keep diligent records. And I'm not saying that you have to publish your records on Facebook and say, look, we're clean. But sometimes it helps. And sometimes it helps having a drawer where you keep all your monthly files. So in case Tri-Sun Films shows up at your place and has these convictions about wrongdoing, that you have the ability to inform them with facts and figures that again, I can't do anything about for organizations that don't keep, but I'm more than happy to work constructively to build the organizations that do. And I am trying to answer your question. I think that's how you grow out of the problem. As someone who works with every community that needs help, people forget that it's hard to do this work. But the better you do it and the more constructively you work on those issues, the further you can go in the future. It allows the next person to come in. If you're the president and you do all the work, if you leave, that organization was only supported by you. But if you put that work towards a continuation and building the structure around you, then somebody else can come and build on the shoulders of giants, which a lot of these presidents and VPs and accountants and professionals who put their free time towards these organizations, they're incredible people. You really, that's why I'm fighting back against you a little bit with this question is people put a tremendous amount of time and effort and love in these organizations and the activities that they provide to their friends, families, and members. And sometimes they make innocent mistakes. Sometimes they're nefarious. But it's easy to pay lip service to negative stuff, but there's so much positive that I can speak to. So again, I appreciate the question, but I'd appreciate a more positive question next time if you want to ask it. Thank you, DJ.
Again, this is my last question. I don't usually ask this to a candidate because it might say connote something, but I will ask you this: why should I, if I'm a voter, if I can vote, why should I choose you? Why should I vote for you?
I think it's a good question. It's a question we get at the doors, right? When we go to a door, people often say, "I haven't put much thought into it. I can give them my flyer. I can give them the information. I can give them my cell phone number." But what people want to know is, why should I support you? And it's about values. I have the liberal values. I've been working with the Liberal Party for many years, and I'm trying to make a difference in the area by bringing an innovative approach. Basically, Marvin Rotran has been the city councillor in Snowdon for the past 39 years, and it's allowed communities to grow here. It's allowed people to use Côte-des-Neiges as a welcoming community for immigrants, for workers, for students, but also a place where seniors and families can grow and live. And I don't want Côte-des-Neiges to lose that. I see a changeover, Marvin leaving, the city's property values going up, lack of attention being given to our area. That's what happens right before people start leaving it. And I want to make sure that I'm there on the front lines, keeping the quality of life here. And that means improving parks. That means improving services. That means paying attention to small details like how to report issues and how to deal with crime prevention. You know, the police in the area do a fantastic job. They've been improving the area in terms of crime and issues with policing over the last 20 years. 20 years ago in Côte-des-Neiges, it was a place you didn't want to walk around at night. Now, unfortunately, there's still incidents like what happened at Coronation School last week, but those are fewer and far between, and often involved smaller groups of people and not the general public being attacked. And I think that's something we need to continuously improve upon. But that means working with the police. That means knowing organizations that already are working on those issues and knowing how to partner with them. And I'm not starting at square zero. I'm starting with 9 years experience. At 22 years old, I said, I love this city. I love Montreal. How do I spend my time improving it? And I started going door to door for Marvin Rotran then. and I haven't really stopped door knocking since, and meeting people at their door, finding out what their expectations are of services, dealing with their issues that they're dealing with, whether it's a tree that needs to be cut or the back alley behind their house being too dirty, and all these issues, they add up to stress. They impact your quality of life. And I want to be somebody who you can rely on when those things come up. So instead of you worrying about it and not sleeping right and hurting your back because of stress, I want you to say, oh, great, this is something I can give to Sonny. He'll handle it. And eventually, I want to get to a place where there's less issues to discuss because we fixed some of these issues. And my highest aspiration is that we get past some of these issues. We fix the garbages issue. We fix the parking issues. We make sure that people on the sidewalk can walk around in the winter. All these things get improved so that we can deal with the next set of problems, which are, how can we live better together? How can we make sure that seniors have more programming? How can we make sure that kids have the facilities that they need so that in the winter, the kids that play basketball, where do they go in the winter? They go inside to play basketball, but there's a lack of gyms in the area. So how do we build more facilities? How do we bring in more money? How do we make sure that people get an increased quality of life for the people who live here? Not for the person who wants to spend 6 times as much money on a place than what someone here can afford, but I want that person's quality of life to continuously improve. And that's what I want my legacy to be. I want to work on this city, and I want to do it for a long period of time, just like my predecessor, Marvin Rotran, did for 39 years. I want to see this place grow, breathe deeper and longer. And I do it because I've met so many people in the area over the years. And this is my favorite part of my favorite city in the world. So there's literally nothing I want to do with my time. And I will do so tirelessly until the job is done.
Thank you so much, Sonny. I know you're so busy man, especially that the election is very near. It will be next week on November 7, and advance voting will be on the October 30 and 31. So, parting words before
If you
we
have any, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly at 514-290-2468. You can reach out to our team as well through 1-844-423-6634. And we'd be happy to give you a lift. Again, just as DJ Yui said, voting starts this weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 9:30 in the morning to 8 p.m. at night. And then there's the last 2 days of voting the following weekend. That's November 6th and 7th, and again, 9:30 to 8. And if you didn't get something in the mail, please reach out so we can confirm that you're on the voters list and tell you where you vote. And if you are a senior watching CPRM radio, please reach out if you need a lift, and we'd be happy to drive you to go vote to ease that stress. All our volunteers will be doubly vaccinated.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sonny. I hope this is not the first and last, huh? Your interview here. Right after you win, I will give me a time.
DJ Yui, I promise to continue to promote the CPRM radio and everything you provide in quality to the area. And
Okay.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for
Thank
the
you so much,
opportunity.
Sonny. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Ayan mga kaibigan, napasabak na naman ako ng Englishan. Sabi nga sa inyo eh. But anyway, as we discussed, yung gusto ko talagang i-emphasize na mga question, at least ginawa ninyo. So, it's up to you to decide, people in Montreal, those who watch this live stream. I hope you will share it, especially dito sa Côte-des-Neiges area, Snowdon. So, ayun pong bahala. Again, salamat sa oras. Thank you so much, Mr. Sonny Moroz. Hanggang dito na lang po ako. Magpapaalam na po ako. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now. See you tomorrow. Kasi susunod si Stephanie Valenzuela for tomorrow para naman sa Know Your Candidates. Bye-bye for now. Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye. See you.